ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khaṭṭāb radiallahu ta'ala anhu one time was patrolling the streets with his slave. I think we were having this problem last time too, right? With this thing. You guys can hear me fine? Today actually happens to be the day that my voice is flat. It's very low today. Let's see. Huh? No, I'm not using the screen. Okay. Hopefully this is better. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he used to patrol the streets and he would check up on the conditions of the people, what was happening in the streets. And he had a slave named Aslam. And they would go around and check up in the different places. And one day as he is walking, he hears from one of the homes, a woman is telling her daughter that mix some water with the milk. And this woman says, Umar bin al-Khaṭṭāb has forbidden us from mixing milk with water and then selling it. She says, but Umar is not here right now, not knowing that Umar radiallahu anhu is listening to the whole conversation. And that girl then says, Umar is not here, but the mother, but the Lord of Umar radiallahu anhu is here. Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khaṭṭāb radiallahu anhu tells his slave Aslam, mark this home. Next day, he summons the family, says that your daughter has a lot of taqwa in her heart. And he says, is she married? And he says that Aslam was not his slave's name, sorry. Aslam was his son's name. So he says, my two kids, Abdullah and Abdurrahman, are already married, but my son Aslam is not married. So he says, why don't you marry my kid Aslam? So she marries Aslam, and she has a daughter. Her daughter's name is Asim. And this Asim has a kid whose name is Umar bin al-ʿAzīz, rahimahullah. So Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khaṭṭāb radiallahu anhu was the great-grandfather of Sayyidina Umar bin al-ʿAzīz rahimahullah. And Umar bin al-ʿAzīz rahimahullah, his great-grandfather Umar bin al-Khaṭṭāb radiallahu anhu had a dream. And in his dream he saw that in his lineage there would be a child that has a mark on his face, a scar on his face, and that this child is going to fill the world with justice. When Umar bin al-ʿAzīz rahimahullah was young, he got in a fight with the butcher's boy. And the butcher's boy scarred him and attacked him. And that's how he had this scar, his lifelong scar that he had. After the Khulafa Rashideen, the four Khulafa, the next dynasty that existed amongst the Muslims for about 90 years was the Umayyad dynasty. And the Umayyad dynasty lasted for about 90 years. The first person that was the Umayyad Khalifa was Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. And his Khilafah lasted for about 19 to 20 years. Very long time. He was a politician from the days of Umar bin al-Khaṭṭāb radiallahu anhu, governor of Damascus. So his whole political career lasted almost half a century. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu had a son. What was his son's name? Yazid. Yazid's Khilafah lasted for about 3 years. Yazid had a son. His son's name was Muawiyah bin Yazid. Muawiyah bin Yazid was a Khalifa for about 1 year. After him, the line from Muawiyah radiallahu anhu ended and the Marwani line began. Marwan bin Hakam was the Khalifa, and his Khilafah lasted 1 year. Marwan bin Hakam had a son, Abdul Malik bin Marwan, and Abdul Malik bin Marwan is very well known. He was very knowledgeable too. He's a narrator of hadith, but he also did a lot of political decisions that were not good. For example, the famous Hajjaj bin Yusuf that was appointed by Abdul Malik bin Marwan as the governor of Iraq. Abdul Malik bin Marwan had a daughter. His daughter's name was Fatima. And Fatima was married to Umar bin al-ʿAzīz rahimahullah. You see this? Fatima was married to Umar bin al-Āzīz. And Abdul Malik bin Marwan, he had made Umar bin al-Āzīz rahimahullah the governor of Medina Munawwara and Mecca. And when he became the governor of Medina and Mecca, he was a very just individual. Now, Umar bin Āzīz rahimahullah himself comes from this really wealthy family. His family, the Islamic empire to the east had reached almost to China, and to the west almost to Andalus. The Islamic empire was at its wealthiest since the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was never this big or this great since then. And Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayh, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. A lot of wealth. They say that the amount of gold Fatima, his wife, received by her father on their wedding day, that amount of gold was never seen before. Like an insane, incredible amount of gold. Anyhow, he gets married, and this is how he enters into this line. And now I'm just going to go through some points and some of his life situations. Can you guys just check up on the kids, please? Ibn Kathir rahmatullahi alayhi says, we don't know anyone who has inherited more wealth than Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi and his brothers. His affluence was so remarkable that the clothes he wore were so expensive and they were so fragrant that Harun bin Salih says that my father used to tell me that when Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi's clothes are washed and his clothes are done being cleaned, the water that was used to wash his clothes, we would wash our clothes in that water and our clothes would remain fragrant for weeks. So you can just imagine the quality of the clothes of Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi himself. From the year 86 to 93, Walid bin Abdul Malik made him the governor of Mecca, Medina, and Taif. And when anything difficult would happen, he would bring the scholars together. The Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's masjid was enhanced over time, and Walid had extended the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam because obviously the population is growing. And then after that, Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi expanded it to include the homes of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you've been to Medina Munawwara, that caged area that you see that goes all the way down, that's where the houses of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ were. And all of those houses were now included into the masjid. When Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi was so just and he was so gentle, people started leaving from all places and moving to Medina Munawwara. Hajjaj bin Yusuf was the governor of Iraq. And while he was the governor of Iraq, Hajjaj bin Yusuf was very stern and strict. And people started complaining to Abdul Malik bin Marwan about the strictness of Hajjaj. So Hajjaj turns around and Hajjaj says, now this man also killed thousands of Sahaba. He killed a lot of people. And he tells Abdul Malik bin Marwan, Umar bin Abdul Aziz is too soft, too gentle. So Umar bin Abdul Aziz was relieved as a governor from Medina. After he was relieved, he stayed in Medina for a little bit. Then he was reappointed in Syria. When he was leaving, he begins to cry. Someone said, why are you crying? You just became the governor of one of the wealthiest provinces in Syria. He said, there's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Medina expels the filth inside it. And it kicks out the filth and the dirt that's inside it, it shoots it out. He said, I'm scared and worried that I am this filth and this dirt that is being kicked out of Madinatul Munawwara. And that is how we should have this mentality when we go for Umrah. And as we are leaving Madina Munawwara, we should have this mentality that I'm leaving Medina. Perhaps I may not be under the situation where it is said that the filth or the hypocrites are expelled from Medina Munawwara. Umar bin Abdul Aziz, rahmatullahi alayh, he was an advisor to Walid bin Abdul Malik and then Sulaiman bin Abdul Malik. So the line goes like this. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, Yazid, Muawiyah bin Yazid, then goes to Marwan. After that, it's all his children. Marwan bin Hakam, 1 year, Abdul Malik bin Marwan. His daughter marries Umar bin Abdul Aziz. Abdul Malik bin Marwan, he's got 2 other sons, Walid and Sulaiman. They both become Khalifa. Walid becomes Khalifa, dies. Sulaiman becomes Khalifa and then dies. So when Sulaiman is Khalifa, Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi and Sulaiman got into an argument. In the middle of the argument, people say, you're a liar, you're lying. Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi said, Wallahi, since the day I found out lying was haram, he said, I haven't lied since that day. He said, the moment I heard lying is not allowed, that was the last day I lied. He's like, I'm not a man that lies. Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi was one time in Arafat, in Hajj, and he would just spend his time crying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about the ummah, about what's going on with the situation of the people. Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi says, anything in the dunya I desired, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to me. When I got everything in this dunya, then my only desire became the akhirah, the hereafter, and that's all I wanted. When Sulaiman was on his deathbed, so Abdul Malik bin Marwan, then his first kid Walid, then his kid Sulaiman. When Sulaiman was on his deathbed, he said, who am I going to make the Khalifa? One of my kids is too small to become Khalifa. The other kid is in a battle in Constantinople. And the Muslim Empire needs a Khalifa. Raja bin Haywa rahimahullah was a great scholar. He said to me, he said, why don't you make Umar bin Abdul Aziz the Khalifa? He's your brother-in-law. He said, okay. So he says, Umar bin Abdul Aziz will be the Khalifa. The moment Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi heard about this, the first thing he said was, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. You and I would get very happy. Get the post of such a wealthy, expensive, powerful position. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Now Allah's going to ask me about the situation and the decisions that I make. They say that he became Amirul Mu'mineen at Jum'ah Salah. And by Asr Salah, this man was a different man altogether. When he was younger, he would wear clothes that were worth 300, 500 dirhams, dinars, expensive, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 garments. And he would touch them and be like, this is disgusting. This is so rough. And after he became Amir al-Mu'mineen, he would wear the cheapest and the most coarse clothes. And when it would rub against his body, he would say, this is so soft and gentle. Someone asked his son, they said, what was the salary of your father at the beginning of his khilafat and at the end of his khilafat? He said, when my dad became khalifa, his salary was 50,000 dinars a year. He said, how much was it at the end of his khilafat? He said, on the last day of his khilafat, his salary was 200 dinars a year. So from 50,000 to 200, you can just imagine the reduction. The Banu Umayyad had looted, they were very pompous. They did a lot of good stuff too, but they also did a lot of bad stuff. A lot of Sahaba got killed, Karbala happened, Hussein radiallahu anhu happened in that time. There was a lot of luxury, pomp, wastage in the ummah, drinking, alcoholism, at the highest seats that was taking place. So ʿUmar bin Abd al-Azīz rahmatullahi alayhi comes as this reformer. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said every 100 years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends someone as a reformer, anyone know what it's called? What is a reformer called? Mujaddid. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends a mujaddid, someone who renews the deen and updates the deen. And ዑmar bin Abd al-Azīz rahmatullahi alayhi was the mujaddid of the first century. He comes and he changes all the practices. Does anyone know how long he was a khalifa for? Anyone know? 40 years. In his time, there's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A time will come when someone will be when there will be no one to give zakat to. In the time of ዑmar bin Abd al-Azīz rahmatullahi alayhi, in the African continent where the Muslims ruled, there was no one to give zakat to. People started coming to him and saying that everyone, you know how Muslims give zakat? What do non-Muslims give? Jizya. So at the end of the year, the non-Muslims would say, they would say the kalima, and they wouldn't have to give jizya, and jizya was a heavy income. So the people came to Umar bin Abd al-Azīz rahmatullahi alayhi and they said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you got to change the rule on this thing because everybody's just saying the kalima now, so they don't have to give jizya. And he said, he said, my work is done. My goal was to turn the whole world with people who were saying La ilaha illallah. He's like, my job is done. Okay. He's the first one to institutionalize Musafir Khana. You know what Musafir Khana is? Like guest houses. So whenever you're traveling, there would be these guest houses for free. So imagine you could travel, you know how like Turkish Airlines would give you a hotel for free, right? They got this from Umar bin Abd al-Azīz rahmatullahi alayhi. He was the first one to incorporate guest houses. One day, you can sleep for free. 2 nights, obviously people just come and move in, you know our Desi people. They were just free, come with the whole family and the qabila over there. That's what happened with the American visa. You know, we just came and populated the land. 1 night for the regular day, 2 nights for the one who is sick. He brings these new concepts in. How long do you think his khilafat was? 40 years? For all this change? 2.5 years. In 2.5 years, Umar bin Abd al-Azīz rahmatullahi alayhi brought such a change in the ummah that his name lives on till today as one of the most just people. All the money that he got, he returned it to the Baytul Mal. The Baytul Mal is the Muslim treasury. He returned all the money. Banu Umayyah had emptied the treasury by taking money for themselves. Umar bin Abd al-Azīz rahmatullahi also emptied the treasury. Why? To spend on the people. I was once in California, and I had spoken on Umar bin Abd al-Azīz years ago, maybe like 5 years ago. And I had spoken on Umar bin Abd al-Azīz. I just finished talking about it. And I went and I visited my friends at Al-Misbah, and they had a small warehouse, like maybe the size of ISRA or half the size of ISRA. And I walked in and I saw and they had stocks, diapers, and all this. And I said, I was like, you know, how many people do you guys feed? They said, we feed X amount of people, this. I was like, okay. Then I said to them that, what is all of this stock for? They said, we pace it out so that we have enough to distribute for the next 6 months. I said, why don't you just distribute as soon as you have it? They said, then we're going to run out of the supplies that we have. I said, then I told them, Umar bin Abd al-Azīz rahmatullahi alayhi would empty it out completely. You are there to distribute on behalf of Allah. Allah will bring back for you. They said, yeah, but like, you can't really run an organization like this. And I said, you know what? I'm just telling you a story. You're probably right. I just spoke on this topic. I'm just sharing it with you. I think I came back a year or so later, and they said, we started implementing distribute as much as possible. And now they have like a 20,000, like their warehouse is the size of IACC, of just stuff that they distribute to the local population, not even to like a population that is out of the country, right? That's the local population. Anyway, he said, when he became Khalifa, he heard a big commotion outside. So he asked, he said, what is this? They said, oh, this is your protocol, your bodyguards, your chariots, all of this is around you, and wherever you go, you're going to have this protocol. He said, between you and me is destiny. You cannot protect me from my taqdeer. He said, if Allah is going to make something harm come to me, he's like, you can't stop it. And then he says, only ʿUmar ibn Muhajir Ansari is going to remain. And he's going to be the leader of my guards, and he's going to be the person, whoever wants to stay, they'll get 10 dinars, a small amount. And he said, the only reason I picked this man is because I saw him reading Quran at nighttime and nobody was watching. And I saw him pray Salah when he thought nobody was looking. So a man who only cares about what his Allah says, he said, that's the type of man that I want, that guards my life. I trust him with my life. People said to him, by the way, his wife Fatima was one of the most royalist princes in Islamic history. Fatima's father, Khalifa. Grandfather, Khalifa. Brother, Khalifa. Other brother, Khalifa. Other brother, Khalifa. Husband, Khalifa. 6 Khalifas directly related to her. Like she was stacked in royalty. And she was just like her husband. The moment they became Muslim, the moment they became a Khalifa, she also donated all of her gold and everything. He came to her and he said, I don't feel comfortable that we have so much wealth and there's so many hungry people in the ummah. He said, if you want to stay with me, give your wealth as sadaqah. If not, remain a princess. I just don't want the culture of our home where we're just trying to keep a certain social status. People want to keep a certain social class. Unke paas hai, they have it. They have 2 blenders, so we need 3 blenders. They had, when we went to their house, they have, red curtains and blue curtains and yellow curtains and all of that. So, talking of curtains, the people of Makkah wrote to Umar bin al-Azīz. They said, Makkah, the Kaaba needs a kiswa. And if you know about the kiswa, the golden lettering on the kiswa is made of real gold water. It's gold plated, it's real gold. If you possess it, you have to give zakat on it. Like it's very expensive material. So they wrote to him and they said, we need money for the kiswa. He said, yeah, no. He said, the hungry people in my dominion need it more than you guys need it. He said, the Kaaba's cloth isn't going to make a difference. He said, but they're hungry people. In another place he said, the man was so focused on people. He would just be crying and he would say that if a goat dies out of hunger at the Euphrates, I'm scared Allah is going to ask me about this. Where is Iraq in Euphrates and where is he sitting? He said, he also said something very interesting. He said, take the crumbs that you have, the leftover food, and go spread it on the mountains. فَلَا يُقَالُ أَنَّ الطُّيُورِ فِي بِلَادِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ مَاتَ جَائِعًا. He's like, so it would not be said that the birds died hungry in the lands of the Muslims. He said, even the animals, feed them, look after them. He was very, very particular about these things. He himself, his food, what was his food? What did he eat every single day? Boiled garlic, oil, salt, and dal. Every day. He had guests over one time. People came to visit him, and he got busy. A little while later, they've been waiting. They said, no, we want to eat. He said, okay. He says, bring my meal. They brought his meal, and that was it. And the guest was like, what is this? Dal. They said, this is his food. He said, okay. He's like, does he not eat anything else? They said, this is all he eats every single day. One day he came home, knocked on his door. His daughters were at home. Daughters of the Khalifa, man. his daughters were covering their face. So he says to his daughters, he says, "My daughters, you cover your face from your own father?" They said, "Dad, we had nothing to eat at home. So all we ate was raw onions. And it's because of the smell that we don't want to uncover ourselves." When it was the day of Eid, his wife, now on the day of Eid, everybody comes, right? From across the lands to come and meet the Khalifa's place, family members, everybody. And by the way, Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi was so skinny that you could count the ribs in his rib cage. You could literally count them. He didn't have, the Khalifa is supposed to go for Hajj every year. And he's supposed to give the khutbah of Arafat and so on and so forth. Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi could not afford Hajj. Someone ended up giving him money. You know, people all the time, like, I want to go Umrah, Hajj, and then someone comes and gives you money, and then you're like, subhanAllah. Everyone's like, well, it's not that relatable, but it happens, right? People are trying to go, and Allah makes it a certain way, okay? It happens to people. And so someone brought 17,000 dirhams to him. The moment he got it, he was like, you know what? I think this money is better spent, feed the poor, feed the needy. He himself was a great alim. He was a very big scholar. He's one of the people that started the concept of getting hadith together and gathering hadith. He sent a letter to Ibn Shihab Zuhri and so on and so forth. He's one of the architects of getting hadith compiled. So anyway, he is with his wife. His wife says, "Look, Eid is coming, and all of my brothers are coming. Their kids are coming, and they're all going to be dressed really nice, and they're going to come in their pomp and all." You know, I'm not saying you splurge. All I'm saying is the kids don't have new clothes. Umar bin Abdul Aziz himself would wear the same garment for 6 months, which means in his khilafah, he only changed his garment 5 times. 5 times in his khilafah, that's it. I was talking about in my khutbah last week that one of the hallmark qualities of Rasulullah was his simplicity. The Prophet didn't bend to these social constructs of just being like the next, wearing the latest shoes, having the latest phone. And if you look at iPhone 16 to iPhone 15, but still the nafs says, I need to get the latest. And people end up, like, there's spoofs on these things. I remember when iPhone first started, like in their second or third model, their iPads or iPods second model, third model, people are making spoofs from those days. I was saying, making a whole video of them doing nothing new. 10 years later, same thing are happening, but people spend money, billions of dollars on these things. Why? It's just the hype. You're buying the hype, you're not actually buying the products. Anyhow, so she says, can you get some good clothes for your kids for Eid? Just something new. He said, I don't have money. She said, okay, just ask the Baytul Mal to give you next month's check early. He said, okay. He goes to the treasury. Treasury says, I need money. He said, you already got your salary for this month. He said, I know. He's like, can you give me the salary of next month, this month? He said, sure, I can. He said, you mind just writing something down on the paper for me? He said, yeah, sure, what do you want? He said, guarantee that you will live for another month. Umar bin Abdul Aziz said, I can't. He said, then I can't give it to you. Justice, adl. Like Umar bin Abdul Aziz was the paragon, the paragon of justice and adala. When he became Khalifa, he was up the whole night. And at Zohar time, he was really tired. So he went to sleep. He wanted to go to sleep. So his son comes to him and he says, he said that, I need to sleep. I'm really tired, I've been up all night. So his son goes, wait, you want to sleep while there's oppression and dhulm happening in the kingdom? So he said, I'll take care of it, my boy, after I wake up. He said, what guarantee do you have that you're going to wake up? Umar bin Abdul Aziz says, you know what? Allah, shukr, alhamdulillah, for a kid of mine that inspires and motivates me. that keeps me in check. Anyhow, every blind man in the ummah, he gave him a khadim, someone to help them out, support them. Every two people who were disabled had a slave that was appointed to look after their needs. And every 5 sick people also were individuals that he would send a slave to look after them. I'm gonna just say 1-2 quotes of his, and then from there, inshallah, we'll open it for Q&A. I really like this one. He said, لا ينفع القلب إلا ما خرج من القلب. He said, nothing benefits the heart that leaves the heart. He said, the thing that leaves the heart was never there to benefit the heart. If it left your heart, it was never there to benefit your heart. And that's profound, incredibly profound. لا ينفع القلب إلا ما خرج من القلب. Or the more accurate translation of it would be لا ينفع القلب إلا ما خرج من القلب. Nothing benefits the heart than what leaves the heart. The moment something leaves your heart, then that is beneficial for your heart. Meaning that as long as things remain in your heart, he was attached to material things. You know, I was watching, I forgot this guy's name, the CEO of Telegram. What's his name? He's got a really interesting Pivler, what's his name? Anyone know? You guys have ilm on your fingertips. What is it? Huh? Y'all are now saying as if he's your best friend. Pablo, what is it? Sandwich? Ajib, this man is a billionaire. And he said, I was watching his interview, and he said, I own no land, no house, no property, no car. And the guy's like, you own nothing? He's like, I own nothing. He's like, I myself don't own a single item. He's like, I have detached myself from material possession. He's like, and I gained influence over 1 billion people. Like, you and I are small minds. We are in a rat race for just trying to accomplish this thing. And what I love about Umar bin al-ʿAzīz rahmatullah alayhi is, number one, he's born with everything. He's tested in that manner. Number two, he's given a responsibility for فَأَدَّى الْأَمَانَةِ. He fulfilled it. He was a man of the people. He cared night and day about people. He would just sit there crying about injustices that happen in the realm. I mean, if he was here today in the situation of Gaza, that would never happen. I mean, may Allah protect our brothers and sisters in Lebanon. 3,000 people like this. It's a really scary world. It's a really scary world. 3,000 people, their pages just popped off, injured, 8-9 people dead. Like technology, like literally these things could be turned into weapons. Our whole lives are in here. And then you couple it with a man like the Telegram owner who says, I'm not, he's like, I live in freedom because I'm not controlled by anything. Now you and I, are we free? We are attached. Homes, we are attached to people, we are attached to places, we are attached to our phones. Can I just step away? Can I take another step anywhere else? Or do I have these chains that are keeping me on this, in this area? We're chained, but they're invisible chains. And we don't even know we're slaves. And we are told you're in the land of the free. Because if you say it enough times, you'll believe it. But you're just in the lands of of slavery. But you chose the slavery. We chose it. We're comfortable with it. Take a person's phone away and they get anxiety, their health starts deteriorating. when was the, like, what's the max you can survive without your phone? Phone has become like the fourth essential. Can you survive 8 hours without your phone, without touching it? A day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days? For your bank, for your this, for that. You have to, for directions. We become lost, including myself. I was born directionally challenged. That doesn't really make a difference for me. But everything ties us in. And Umar bin al-ʿAzīz taught a valuable lesson. That true freedom is non-attachment to worldly things. Be a deliverer of justice and be a man of simplicity. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with the good qualities of Umar bin al-ʿAzīz rahmatullahi alayhi. And like I mentioned, 2.5 years, that was his term. 2.5 years. And 2.5 years is for us is nothing. It's a blink of an eye. Y'all just get your associates in like 4 years. Should be getting it in 2. You know, our kids really like delaying their time. Alhamdulillah, everyone here is mashallah very good. Excelled kids over here. Talking about other kids. But yeah, 2.5 years, man fixed the whole kingdom. Fixed the whole khilafat in 2.5 years. A man was abused by the Roman Empire. And he said in Constantinople, and he sent a letter to the king over there, and he said, if you don't release the prisoner, he's like, I'm going to send such an army that the first man will be standing where you are, and the last man will be standing where I am. And the prisoner was released immediately. Those were the Muslims were like, they said beyond, we condemn them. We condemn them, but we do a lot of business with them. But we condemn them. Like, really? Like 52 Muslim countries? And our brothers and sisters in Gaza getting slaughtered left and right? Makes no sense. 2.5 billion Muslims? Weak as anything. The amount of money we have is insane. Muslim countries and the Muslims are very wealthy. But it shows us Allah's teaching us a valuable lesson. With everything you have, you can't do anything. You're powerless. And then you have those people who are sitting in like the mountains of like Afghanistan. 2 decades, the Americans carpet bombed the heck out of them. 2 decades later, these guys are on merry-go-rounds. Took their weapons too. Got bombed by those weapons, and then took those weapons and started doing parades. Straight from the mountains. They fought the Soviets, another superpower, in the 80s, from 2000 to 2020. They fought the Americans, and you're like, these people are like Ajib. And Allah just shows you like you can have military, you can have this, you can have everything. But the nizam of Allah is different. Anyhow, the next few minutes, if anyone has a question, we have Isha at 8:45, but we're going to end in the next 5 minutes, inshallah. If anyone has any questions, they can ask, inshallah. On this topic or any topic.
Probably a bigger question, I guess, but like, what was like the engine or the system or the